Resistance Management School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by CropLife Canada.
Bernard Tobin here back at SWAC, the Southwest Ag Conference, joined now by Dave Bilyea, weed researcher based here at Ridgetown College campus, University of Guelph. Hey, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Bern.
Awesome. Now, we talk a lot about weed resistance, glyphosate weed resistance here in Ontario. We've got 21 weeds that have been identified with resistance. We talk about how to stop them a lot and see if we can sort of control them, but I'm interested in how they spread, and you've done a great presentation today on that. Amazing how these weeds go across, get to Ontario, and then go across the province. Let's talk about Canada fleabane, one of the bigger ones, obviously. It was amazing that you said that a seed can fly 500 kilometers.
Yes, and what they had to do, they always suspected this is possible, because when we think about seeds flying, obviously what comes to mind is dandelions with the pappus and the seed blowing. But they thought, Canada fleabane is becoming fairly widespread, the resistant type. So, and this was evident in the U.S. long before it was here. So they wanted to find out at Cornell University how they could prove that this was happening. So what they did was take radio-controlled airplanes and fly them across a known patch they had planted of Canada fleabane and observe it, do collections at different altitudes. First of all, at the surface boundary layer, which is about 2 meters above the canopy of fleabane, and then they went progressively up to 140 meters and did samplings to see where that fleabane was, if it was up there. And sure enough, they made collections. And through that research, they were able to determine that, yes, this seed is getting into that planetary boundary where the winds aloft are much stronger and can move that light seed great distances. And they estimated it could be up to 500 kilometers from the original source. So obviously, it could move herbicide-resistant seeds very quickly across the province.
Giant ragweed for me is a fascinating story, because you talked about the role that earthworms play.
Correct. And again, a research study at Ohio State University, they were curious the fact that giant ragweed does not produce a lot of seeds in comparison to a lot of other weeds, but it was becoming a predominant weed species in a number of fields. So why was that? So what they observed and did studies on was earthworms were actively gathering the seed and dragging it down into the burrows. What was interesting enough is it has no benefit to the earthworm whatsoever. And they're planting it at different depths. So the ones closer to the surface obviously were protected and would germinate the next year, but other ones were dragged down to a dormant level where they would hang around for a number of years before they were activated to grow. So in that way, they ensured the giant ragweed infestation would continue.
And protected against predators, right?
Right, and they were gathering up to 90% of the seed rain that was present from these plants. So obviously a lot of potential food for other animals was gone because of the earthworms gathering this seed.
Common ragweed, another one that we're tackling here. What's interesting about that is the dormancy of that seed.
Right. Common ragweed can lie dormant in what they call a seed bank, a weed seed bank, for up to 40 years or less, but it could be a couple of generations of farmers, basically. So if a farm was bought and sold to another person, they may not even know that there was ragweed there in the past, and all of a sudden it shows up because it was seeded decades ago.
A couple more. Water hemp, just a new arrival, pretty much. Herbicide resistance. Amazing, I guess, the role that waterfowl will play in this one.
Again, there was a study done at the University of Missouri, and they were quite concerned about water hemp, but also Palmer amaranth, which we do not have in Ontario at present time. But they did studies of collections of wild waterfowl that were shot by hunters and brought in, and they did autopsies on them, and through the different intestinal system they were able to collect seed and germinate them and find that coming out the other end of these ducks and geese were viable seed, and particularly water hemp and Palmer amaranth.
Yeah.
So, and because waterfowl, again, are migratory, the potential for them moving seed across into Canada, particularly Ontario, because we're in one of the flyways, is quite real. So we have not seen Palmer amaranth as of yet, but we definitely have water hemp here. And now that water hemp is established in parts of the province, native species will help spread this as well, because that's a food source in winter for native songbirds.
Now, Palmer started, Missouri, based there, pushing north, but not here yet.
No.
But we got to keep our eyes on
Right.
some.
Well, it's actually in New York State. I was just talking to a fellow today. It's definitely established in Ohio. It's in Michigan, and beyond Minnesota. And again, it's not unusual to have waterfowl moving back and forth across the lake through the season, and they could easily bring those types of weeds across the lake in a day.
Well, hopefully, we're a few years away from that day. It'll keep you busy.
We're not there yet. It's job security, like they say. But
thank you so much for your time.
thank you very much.
Great.